righty. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's April, right? Yes. Welcome to TPMA's April monthly meetup. We are very excited to welcome you to Lost in Translation, working with engineering in the age of vibe coding. This is sort of the end of a series for us, I think, pulling back the curtain and cutting through the bullshit around all of the narratives and nonsense that have pervaded all of our public spaces over the last couple of months and really year. The first one we did was really talking about how to infuse AI into your product and think about, testing towards, having AI within your platform. The second one was ways of working and how you as a PM should be approaching using AI. Both of those sessions are online. You can stream those. I highly recommend checking out March's program with Keith Dell, the lead PM from Shopify, who was talking about how Shopify has infused AI in their ways of working. It was phenomenal. And today it's all about the changes that we're encountering in terms of PM's relationship with engineering, where you really can't avoid the fact that there is a massive tidal wave of change happening. I'm currently working with an AI startup called Coconut, where our ICP is a builder PM, which is a new role, kind of keeps coming up again and again. And so the idea is that as our companies sort of encounter this, and as we encounter this, what do we need to be thinking about in terms of best practices? And so we have an incredible panel of speakers who are going to be talking about kind of the 3 stages that PMs need to be thinking about in terms of their relationship with engineering and the processes that we're all kind of watching change on a daily basis. So first, we acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. So TPMA is Canada's longest running product community. Is this anyone's first TPMA event? Nice, solid. We love to see it. We are a fully registered nonprofit and 100% volunteer driven. I myself am a volunteer. And we would love for you to get involved, even if it just means, becoming a member on our free tier and joining our Slack community. There's so much benefit to it. We'd like to thank BrainStation, our venue sponsor. Coming up next.
Thanks, Rosemary. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good evening. Happy Monday. It's been a long Monday. Just want to take a quick moment, welcome everyone to BrainStation and our space. My name is Mitch Savage. I'm a manager here. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, that QR code in the top right will take you there if you want to learn more about BrainStation and what we're doing on a week-to-week basis. Just quickly, by show of hands, who's at BrainStation for the very first time today? Okay, we got a lot of new folks. Well, just want to take a quick moment to introduce what we do. We are the global leader in AI and digital skills training. We work with professionals like yourself who are looking to learn skills across the digital spectrum, product, data, marketing, design, as well as AI. We also work with leading organizations to ensure that their teams are well equipped for the skills to be successful in today's economy. Outside of our core products and our core offerings, we also run and host hundreds of events across the digital field, disciplines, industries. So highly recommend take a look at some of the upcoming ones we have. We actually have a demo event of Lovable coming up on Monday next week. Final thing I'll mention is BrainStation itself. We were founded in Toronto 14 plus years ago. Really, our core mission still remains the same today. We are a hub for Toronto professionals to come together, connect, and really push ideas and industries forward. So that's exactly why we open up our space to really great organizations and community groups like the TPMA to have those conversations and really do it all in our space. So you're in store for a really great event, a great evening. Thank you so much all for being here, and hopefully see you at BrainStation again soon. Thanks all.
Thanks, Mitch. Awesome. So we also have a lot of sponsorships and partnerships that we're always looking to create relationships with so that our members get benefits. Bisbee is an AI-assisted whiteboard for product and delivery teams. If you scan that QR code, you get 3 months free on the Bisbee plan if you're interested. And how many volunteers do we have here? A couple. We really do run and thrive on our volunteer, army. They are an incredible group of people. And again, if you're interested in joining TPMA as a volunteer, we are always looking for additional help. So you can talk to any one of our volunteers or board members who are here as well tonight. Any community builders here? Nice, couple. So community builders pay a, I think, very, very small fee in terms of the value that you get. If you support the TPMA by making a $30 a year payment, you get 25% off all events and programs, and that includes our workshops and our upcoming conference. So basically, like, you can really quickly and easily, like, pay off your community builder membership in savings off of any of those tickets. So coming up, we have a lot coming up. We have our annual general meeting, which is sort of like our kind of big overview of what we did this year as a community. It's where we elect new board members. It's where we talk to our community about how we invested money back into you, what our programming did, etc. And it's also just sort of a celebration party of us as a community. So please pop that date in your calendar, and we really hope that we'll see you there. And we also really would love to start hearing from you guys on social media. A big thing about these events is I always want to know, like, what was your takeaway? Like, what did you take away from tonight? What was sort of the one thing as you walk out of here that's going to stick with you? And so if you post that insight or takeaway on LinkedIn and at TPMA or Rosemary King, you'll be entered to win 2 free tickets to any upcoming TPMA or Product TO meetup. So if there's something that really sticks with you or some piece of value that you get from this evening, share it, let other people know that it was valuable. Hopefully it will convince somebody else to come to a meetup. And then, you get entered into a little raffle to get some free tickets. And then our our Toronto Product Con conference unconference. I am really excited about this. Our CEO, Andrew, has been working tirelessly on the program. It is an incredible group of speakers that he has managed to pull together, some amazing names who are really moving mountains and making massive changes in the tech industry as a whole. And I think that this is going to be a really special event. So I highly recommend you grabbing your ticket for that now. All right, and if everybody could please take a picture of this QR code, this is how you're going to submit questions for tonight. So anyone I'm going to leave this up because I want to see everybody taking a picture of it. Because we don't allow people to just stand up and yell. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Everybody got it? Okay, last couple. Holding it. Phenomenal. Grand. Okay. So these are our speakers for tonight. I am incredibly excited about this lineup. We had some really fun brainstorming conversations around how to, really structure this program so that we're getting a lot of really interesting, diverse perspectives around the topic. And their experience and their expertise literally blew my hair back. So I am so excited for these talks. So our first speaker is Andrew Wright. Andrew Wright and I actually have a common history in that we both worked at Pivotal Labs, which, just ask us, we'll tell you in 5 seconds that we worked there. We both loved working at Pivotal Labs, and we talk about it all the time. Andrew Wright is an engineering leader with over a decade of experience building and scaling software, product, and community support teams. Most recently, head of engineering at Adaptus, which was a climate tech company. He previously was a founding member at 10,000 Coffees, which was acquired, and led delivery teams at Pivotal Labs, which was also acquired. A computer engineer by training, Andrew is passionate about empathy-driven leadership and making sure teams are building the right thing. Come on up to the stage, Andrew.
There's going to be a request for the
big button, yeah.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Every time I talk, it's on a little screen, so this is a pretty new experience. So if you see me staring at this is the force of habit. Also, thank you for inviting a dev into the product hangout. I'm really excited about figuring out what product actually does. No, just kidding. So I want to talk about why we are doing this anyway, and how product and engineering can actually work together, and how I'm seeing kind of the trends and what's going on. And I'm Andrew or Andy, whatever comes first. I'm a computer engineering by training. I've done everything from embedded programming, OS, all the way up to AI now. And I just really love building stuff. So I'm kind of still the kid playing with Lego, making stuff. And I think software is a great opportunity for us to still do that, just make really cool stuff. And also, if you see me wandering around, can you hear me? Oh, sorry. All right. This is also a new thing for me, this microphone. So if you see me wandering around, you want to talk to me and you don't know what to bring up, just bring up your favorite book. I would love to talk about your favorite book with you. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about a little check-in, like a pulse check with your dev team. I'm going to pretend to be your dev team, see how things are going, see how things aren't going well with the confrontation, and then I'm going to propose a solution that I think will work for fixing it. And the spoiler is devs are stressed, and I think everyone's stressed with AI. And I think you can map all of your dev team into one of these categories. And I think if you have your y-axis between grumpy to feral, you can kind of figure out where each one of your dev team members will fall. So over here in the grumpy quadrant, we have no AI. They write code, they use their brain. Then you go into like a Stack Overflow, but a little nicer, kind of answers the questions without teasing you about it. Then you can autocomplete, then you can use your sidebar chat. You've got your planning mode, and then you've got your multiple agents. So planning mode on steroids, multiple work streams contextualizing at the same time. Then you've got your fully autonomous dev systems. Good luck, little buddy. And then you have your token maxing falling off a cliff into the matrix. And I think with this, what I want to separate is the difference between pure vibe coding, token maxing, and kind of falling into the hype cliff on the far left-hand side, and kind of actually using AI to program better as a tool. So I think all the blue are kind of using AI as your programming tool, using it as being a better developer. And then on the right, it kind of feels like a little bit falling into bad practices and just getting addicted to watching things look like they're passing. And you can also, it's fun to map people on this chart when you start talking to other people. Oh yeah, also, I'm a 6 to 7. So where I like to be is kind of in that 6 to 7 range, which is a really, really fun. I'm trying to be a 7, but I'm still at a 6. It's not sequential too, you can jump around. So why we're stressed is that cognitive load has never been higher. And cognitive load, especially in the dev team, when you're managing multiple agents, you're doing a skill set that you've never done before. You're actually parallelizing your work, and you're actually trying to do multiple things at the same time. And if you've ever done OS, like context switching for a person's not free. There's time required for your thought process, and you're changing to switch. And this is funny to a bunch of PMs who are constantly context switching all day, but for devs, it's kind of a new skill for us. And your PR rate is tripled. There's a really interesting stat from GitHub about like 30% of PRs now are just not even reviewed, they're just merged in, which is kind of crazy, kind of anxiety inducing. And the demands now for every engineer is to be an over-leveraged engineer. So your delivery rate and your expectations for you has never been higher, what you can accomplish. And a really sad part is you're losing your favorite part of the job. So developers became developers because they love writing code. They love that process. They love building things. They love thinking about it. And now you kind of get stuck with the parts you hate. You hate going through tickets. You hate doing all of that kind of boring stuff. And PRs, I don't really know anyone who's ever liked doing a PR in their life, pull request, reviewing code. And the 10,000 pound gorilla is everyone's afraid of losing their job. And that's a very real fear. And every CEO I've talked to has asked how they can leverage AI to get more from their dev team, and then what they do with the people that are in the 1 to 2 category that aren't getting on board with AI and being faster, which is a, kind of a scary reality. And we're moving really, really fast. And I also need to be clear here, I love AI. I think it's great. I love working with it. I think it's really, really fun. So I'm not trying to be like a doomsday AI person, but I think we're going too fast and it's having consequences. And I think this is from Circle CI. This stat right here is the scary one, 70.8% main branch success rate, which is a 5-year low, which means your main branch, your production code, the thing that you're shipping to production is failing 30% of the time. It's like not passing, which is not a great thing. And this was kind of manifested too with Amazon losing 6.3 million orders in a single day. And now they're on a 90-day reset for code quality. So they ship their agent, they ship a bunch of code with it, and they have to reset. But there really is a brilliant silver lining to AI, and which is why it makes me so excited, is that the gap between what you want to make and what you can make has never been smaller. And the range of scale of what you can do as a company, a small team, I've never seen this before. This is like amazing what you can accomplish and what you can do. So there's a huge upside. There's really, really fun stuff you can do with it. And so I want to just say, yeah, it's really scary and it's new and it's really hard. And if you're off Twitter for a week, you have no idea how to do your job. There is a huge upside to it, and it's really, really fun. But some of the challenges, and I think this is one of my favorite quotes, is that text without a context is a pretext for misunderstanding. Maybe I'll just sit there for a second, let people think what that goes with. But without a context for the thing you're reading or thing you're doing, it's like you're setting yourself up for misunderstanding the intent, right? So it's a fun little thing. So I think one of the big challenges is there's hungry mouth problem. Your dev team now with your agents and engineers can consume tickets at a rate never heard of before. And as a PM, it's really hard to keep that backlog full and making sure your dev team's still churning and cranking out what you want. And every IPM is like, all the tickets are gone, new set of tickets to figure out, and figuring out what your velocity is and what your team can do is kind of that hungry mouth problem. So as a PM, you're the mama bird trying to feed her babies and they just keep eating ticket after ticket after ticket. The second problem is a translations problem. So this existed before AI, and it's worse now with AI. So before AI, we were all kind of playing this game of broken telephone and trying to figure out what each person is trying to say and what that meaning is. And every one of us was an individual translator for those requirements. So the customer saying, hey, people aren't buying enough cookies. Product manager's like, oh, let's make cooking ordering more easier, sorry. Then the designer designs it, the engineer figures out what that goes, and now they're translating it inappropriately to the agent or trying to translate it. And the agents are really, really good at filling in contextual clues, filling in the blanks, but they're still getting stuff wrong. And it's our job to try to do that without being broken translator. And I put an AI agent on the far left-hand side, but there's agents on every single person, on every single spawning off everywhere. And I think this translation problem is really evident because a developer, that was always their job, was to transfer the what that needs to be created into the how to make that work. So you're kind of marrying the requirement with the implementation. So if it's code, a prompt, a plan, a question to push back on, you're doing that translation between what's coming in and what's coming out. And devs right now are just pasting from the ticket into Cloud Code and seeing what happens. This is from Programming Humor, the Office Space meme. I really love it. And I think regardless of the AI level you're at, you're still translating. So if you're down here at no AI, you're just translating the requirements, translating what you need to do. And on every tier, there's a version of your translation or the context in which you're living in and how you're delivering. So, translation all the way down. And then the third issue is there's a build trap problem. And this book is from 2018. It's kind of like an oracle, I guess, of what's going to come now. And the problem is that speed without validation is just really, really expensive noise. Before, dev was expensive. It took a long time. And it was a forcing function to make sure that product was building the right thing. There was all these skills, all of these practices, all this playbook that you could use to make sure you were building the right thing because you didn't want to incur the risk and the cost of what it would take to actually develop it and go back and forth. Now you can build 10,000 wrong things by Friday, right? It's incredibly fast, but you still need to be measured by your outcomes instead of your outputs, because if you're just cranking out outputs, it doesn't really matter, right? Like you just need to have the right outcome that comes from it. So with this, I think, what are we going to do about it? And I think the dev and product really needs to become co-problem solvers, not co-ticket cog factory machines where producers and consumers are just going back and forth the whole time. And this is a old tool for a new context and a new solution. And I think the best way to solve this is using a mixed and balanced team. This is, we're talking about Pivotal Labs. This is very near and dear to our hearts. It was very front and center the whole time. And what this does is it means instead of, fence or tiers and passing information along, you have a composed PM design and engineering team, and you work on the same problem, share the same context, and there's no fence throwing back and forth. You have a shared discovery and framing, which isn't just shared delivery. A lot of agile teams really love to share on the delivery side, right? The iteration on the shipping, what happens. Not a lot put the devs into the discovery framing, figuring out what we're supposed to do happen part. And I think that's one of these things that gets solved. And the last one is becoming outcome aligned instead of output aligned. Measuring the success on what we've achieved, not how fast we achieved it. And why this works is because if you embed your engineers in the discovery, You don't need a translation problem because they're problem solving. They're biased the entire time. They live in that customer problem. They've seen the same thing again and again and again, and they know without needing to fill in the blanks what needs to happen. If you're framing the how should we together, you stop the build trap because you're already questioning how we can build this, what we need to do, and how do we validate this. The question of why are we doing this anyway gets answered in both lenses. And I think I forgot to bring this up, but that question has come up several times in IPMs, like, why are we even doing this? Why are we doing this? Like, what is the purpose? And without that context, it's really hard for devs to make choices. And the last one is if you're aligning around the problem, not the ticket, you don't need to write tickets for devs because devs can write their own tickets. They know what they're doing. You can align, we can shift, but in a lot of cases, the devs will write their own tickets. They can submit it. They're go against their own problems. They all can write, I assure you. But you kind of solve this hungry mouth problem because you're aligned on the problem. You all know what you're doing. You're all approaching it from different lenses and you can deliver it together. And I think I'll pause for a second, just think about this. AI is pushing really hard to make product go into dev. And it's pushing dev really hard to go back into product, to go up into the product. And I don't think we need to shy away from that. I think we should just really lean into that. I think we should just become full problem solvers. And there's a world where product will always be better and better suited and have better skill sets for this the Lantern box. There will always be things that product people are just really, really good at that devs won't be good at. There's always going to be things that devs are going to be really, really good at that product people just won't be good at, right? That'll be a nightmare. How does it scale? What is the cost? All of these other factors. But there's this middle layer of the really, really good stuff, which is where we can align, shaping the problem before it becomes a ticket, understanding what we need to do, framing together, working this through and figuring out how we can actually build this together. And I think there will always, and I think there should always be a world where there's engineering and product marrying that together and then just going faster with AI rather than shying away from it. And I think where this allows us to go is it helps us change from being like a ticket factory to co-problem solvers. Our chunk size, instead of one ticket per, it's one problem, and we're working the problem together. Our blanks are filled by shared judgment. The PM is synthesizing research, validating outcomes. The dev is shaping the solution, and agents get fed, instead of a ticket description, it's the intent and context that we all have to be able to do this. When I get excited, I talk really fast, so sorry. And I think when you're rolling this out on your own teams and you want to push this with your own companies, you don't have to blow up how everyone works right away. We're all kind of stepping on landmines every day for figuring out how we work it again together. But we can just start small, iterate, see how it goes. That's a great mantra for just life. So in the next user interview, bring your lead dev, bring in your 2 dev team members, and then see how they synthesize it, see how they share the digital sticky notes, see how they combine it. When you're doing how might we's or you're doing any kind of ideation or your wireframing, instead of tossing requirements, bring the dev team into the wireframing, see how you can step-by-step do it. And then, what you're doing is just building up that shared context, that shared understanding so that you don't have to answer all the nuanced questions. You already have full problem solvers carrying it forward through your different lenses. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I had to resist yelling preach like every 5 seconds over the course of that talk. I'm preach. And everything old is new again. Basically, we've been talking about this since 2011 at Pivotal Labs, and here we are still talking about it. But thank you so much. That was an incredible talk. Up next is Liliana Guzman. She is a staff product manager at Jane App, a practice management platform for health and wellness. I use it to schedule my therapy sessions. She leads AI and front-end platform initiatives that shape how Jane's teams build, ship, and scale. With a background spanning regulated healthcare, fintech, and developer experience, she's known for bringing product clarity to the places where complexity lives and has spent her career building ecosystems that deliver value. Come on up.
Let me see. Hello, everyone. Well, I want to introduce you a little bit about the context of Jane. Jane is this, super fun space where we have everything that a practice needs to run their business, booking, charting, everything in between. And it's also been considered recently a Canadian unicorn, if you will, fast growing. I joined 2.5 years ago. I think we were 200 people at that point. We are 800 people today, a little bit over 800. And being a PM at a company like Jane means that you are also dealing with an enormous amount of complexity all the time. People actually buy the software to run their practices, like this is their business, right? And you are also interacting with very, very smart engineers, like deep experts in their domain, and you are constantly doing calls that are not like the entire picture of the problem. So you have to deal with that. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about my space, which is platform product management. It's a little bit of a different beast. So what I do is I lead 2 teams right now, development AI tools type of thing, and front-end foundations. And I'm also a former designer, so that will give you a little bit of context. And so that's right at the intersection of all of these roles that are very, very quickly changing. And well, in case you didn't know, platform product management is not really about building the features that people actually click on the app. It's about building capabilities of our systems that enable those teams to ship faster and better products. So there's a high risk of your job being like invisible to everybody, right? But there is also a high reward that if you do your job well, then every single team in that company ships faster, better, with more quality. And all of the job is about making that value undeniable. So it becomes visible to everybody. As a result, I end up working with engineers a lot. They are my customers, my primary customers. They represent a large number of our teams, like our team composition, but I also work with designers and PMs. So I spend a lot of time thinking about the intersection of all of these roles. And, we heard engineer always brings the reality, right? Engineering brings the reality of what we can build. So all of the constraints, how do we scale this thing? This is a terrible idea, of course. Design brings clarity about the language that our users need. They put together a great user experience. They make sure that that empathy gets translated into a cohesive user experience at the end of the day. And product brings the direction, right? We understand why we're building, why are we even building this thing, in which order of priority we're placing that, and how do we actually make sure that that thing was successful. So when I started my career, these disciplines looked a little bit more siloed. I don't know if you were around when engineers built on almost a book of requirements that were really specs of everything and anything that they would have to do to accomplish a goal before they even went into actually knowing and understanding the problem space. Designers used to hand off PNGs, images really, that engineers had to work with. And PMs, I don't even know if PMs were around. And I want to pause a little bit here because, yeah, we always say that the lines are getting a little bit blurry, but were they even clear to begin with? In the best companies, in the best teams I've ever worked, the lines have always been very blurry. So I had engineers that were talking about the user experience. I had designers that were thinking about all of the constraints, and PMs that weren't afraid of getting their hands a little bit dirty to get things done. So Gen AI, sorry about, I've been talking the entire day, sorry. Gen AI, generative AI is not necessarily changing that dynamic. It is just making it faster because the tooling got a lot better. So I think that is really a gift that we should harness. But I want to also level the ground on what we're talking about here today, which is vibe coding. It has gotten a lot of media attention everywhere. We have seen it everywhere, right? And when I think about what vibe coding is and isn't, I want to start by defining it. I'm going to read that description because I don't remember it myself. But it is the practice of using AI-assisted tools to prototype ideas, prototype keyword, ideas fast enough with limited resources that you can actually learn something before committing to a path. So it is not really about writing bad code or writing like an amazing product. That is not really what's in question. It's really about shortening the path between I had an idea and I have this solution for a problem that is worth exploring, and I can show you something in that direction. So, like shortening this path of I have an idea, I prototype something, I get feedback, and I understand the value, is really like what we're trying to shorten the path towards. And of course, there is a little bit of like changing in our framework and like how we think about producing something, because vibe coding probably is not going to get you like a perfect result, but it's going to help you uh, speed up that learning, which is really what we're doing here in PM, right? We have always been in the business of translating those ideas into reality. So this is an opportunity space for us as PMs, and I think we should really lean into it. Now, of course, we have vibe coded something, and of course, I created this diagram, and you would think like, well, I have something, Lillian, and you're telling me I cannot ship that because that's not an actual product, it's just a prototype. Well, obviously it depends of who you are and what your context is. So I really have this like very simple framework for it. If you are a founder, you are a solo founder who was trying to get buy-in for your idea, you're trying to show this to your investors, you are trying to get a team to join you, probably ship it, right? Learn fast. That is the 0 to 1 space. It's really, really valuable. If you are building greenfield internal tools, well, likely, you can use some guardrails for like data security and whatnot. Probably you can ask your team to help you, and they will. And this is the space that I really, really like to carve out some space for exploring. And then, of course, some PMs have an engineering background, and they understand the risk, right? If you do, maybe still talk to your team. This is the danger zone where you probably could break something if you wanted. You are dangerous enough that you can understand the risk and you can ship it. You still want to talk to your team. And if you are a PM at a company like Jane, I think this is, non-negotiable that there are some other things at risk. I'm not only trying to learn something quickly, I'm not only trying to explore a new idea, but there's a risk of even damaging the trust of our customers, and that trust is not something that you can buy back. So yeah, in that case, we probably should be very careful and talk to your team, hand off this project, get it to be an actual product. And then, yeah, I really wanted to make this distinction between production software and a prototype, because I think that is entirely the difference. But also, when we sometimes talk about agentic systems that our teams use to build software, that is not the same as a PM vibe coding. I think there's a distinction, right? Engineers are really doing the engineering with different tools the same way that you are trying to do your job in a different way in this age. Okay, so none of this works really without the right conditions, and I have identified these 4 key conditions that have to be met for you to be able to, vibe code or explore generative AI in the best possible way with your engineering team. That is organizational enablement, knowing your job deeply, knowing your product space, and having curiosity. I'm gonna go into each one of them. So when I say organizational enablement, I really mean 3 specific things. The first one is the tools. So that is literally having access to Claude Code, having access to Cursor or Copilot, whatever it is that you're using. But instead of like you having to figure out a free trial or paying for your own code, it's literally making sure that you have these tools available as infrastructure. Yeah, I've seen people also sharing credentials and things like that. That is the first thing that An organization has to commit for you to be able to harness the value of generative AI. The second one is guardrails. So that is clear policies. The best teams that I have seen doing this, they are enabled by policies, not guardrail, not they are not gatekeeping you from doing something, but actually are helping you understand what is allowed, who can ship what, who has to review it, and when you are allowed to do so. And the third one is having some kind of enablement for knowledge and time to acquiring that knowledge. So, I feel like this is the one that most companies skip. And that has specific implications. If you are all the time pressured to ship something and you are in the building trap, you probably don't have to do this. But this is literally having hackathons, lunch and learns, sharing resources within the company that are approved about how you can use generative AI. And if you don't have any of these things, you're going to have a bottleneck at some point. Go quickly. But the second one is knowing your job deeply. And this is all about what product managers traditionally do, right? You probably have written one of these documents at some point in your life, but you have to ask yourself, what is the point of them? They are in some way or another trying to share some kind of context, encapsulate a decision that was made at some point in time. So if context sharing is the goal, what is the shortest path to sharing that context? Is it really that, PRD that nobody reads? Or maybe instead of that, I can do a live dashboard where my team can go and understand how the product is moving. And, I really, again, going back to what the job of the PM is, in one line, if I try to summarize it, is doing anything and everything within your power to make a product successful. So if you in the past were trying to do a Figma prototype, but really that Figma looked like you were trying to build a spaceship in AutoCAD, well, now you can probably vibe code that. And if you were trying to build a financial model for your product, but math is really hard and that's not my thing, now you can probably build that with some generative AI tool. Maybe you were trying to build a referral program for your product, but logic is also very difficult to put together what the whole picture looks like. You can probably get very quickly a first draft of that. And of course, figuring out why we need Kubernetes clusters. Why can we go fast? Why is that not something that you can deliver tomorrow? You can probably also learn and understand why this is valuable and why this is important for your product. So, that brings me to the third point, which is knowing your product. I just want to give you a couple examples. So one of my products is Burrito Design System. It is a design system that is a Figma kit, but it's also a shared component library, a React library in code. And it had very good adoption initially, but with the generative AI-assisted tools, I saw that people were prototyping, user interfaces, and they didn't really look like the design system that we had, but the people were still trying to infuse the Jane branding into those products. So that moment of insight actually led me to create Burrito Brain, which is like just a series of context files, skills, an MCP server that allows you to harness the context of that design system into the AI-assisted coding tools. And now what I'm doing is this workshop actually tomorrow with my PM and design team to actually show them how they can use Claude Code to do this. And the last one is curiosity. So we all have heard, we don't need PMs. Engineers can write PRDs now. And we also don't need developers because we can vibe code everything. So I would say don't let that. Like, these things are true if you let them clutter your brain with fear. But you can also take this into curiosity. So one thing very specific I did is during last December, I created a Advent of AI inspired by the Advent of Code. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's a series of engineering challenges that happen around December 1st to December 24th. And I came up with 20 real ways in which I could transform my job using generative AI. This is not only vibe coding, like using any tool that I could possibly find and try to transform my job. And instead of feeling like I was gonna lose my job, I came out of that challenge empowered, right? So it really is a lot of curiosity. This is one of the challenges. The customer whisperer was the challenge. And what I did was I created this research repository for my team using, we have a tool in our company where we can record all of our meetings and have summaries and transcriptions of everything that happens. But I created this library of customer interviews that in my case are internal, isolated that context, and then using a cloud project, I was able to ask any question about any topic that somebody has come up with during those customer interviews. And then I can turn that into an Ocean artifact. But of course, a lot of things had to be true here. My company has to enable these MCP servers for me in a secure way. I had access to all of these tools. I had the time to explore and experiment. And of course, I had the curiosity to do this. It only took me 2 hours, and a lot of teams are doing something similar like this, inspired or by their own means discover a similar workflow. But it really enables people to, instead of going to that PRD that nobody consults, going and ask questions to this source. And then the last thing, I've been working for almost 20 years with the engineers. The only one thing that I would say is like, do not pretend to know it all. Ask the dumb questions, have curiosity, like work with them, because if you do, you'll have the best allies that you can possibly imagine to help you build this thing that you really think that your users need. And yeah, I think that you can go deep, go back to first principles, which in my domain means sharing that context with my engineer. I have no option. They are there all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Liliana. Amazing. All right, and last but very certainly not least, we have Amin Bashi as a seasoned product executive entrepreneur. When I saw his background, I was kind of like, wow, this guy's amazing. Currently, he's co-founder and CEO at, I believe I'm pronouncing this, Decisio, focused on building the world's most effective decision operating system for product teams. During his time at Product School, Amin coached and trained product managers and executives at Fortune 500 companies like Amadeus, Visa, and JP Morgan, among others, to upskill and align their teams to accelerate revenue growth and achieve cost savings. Kana.
So much. All right. Thank you so much. So as Rosemary mentioned, I'm a co-founder and CEO of Decisio. That was very close. That's why I didn't correct you. So close. So before starting Decisio, I was working at a company called Prequel in 2-hour learning. You might have heard of the 2-hour learning system, which is the world's first AI school where kids learn core academics in just 2 hours a day. So your kids go to school at 9 a.m., they get a laptop or a tablet, and they learn all the core academics, math, physics, in just 2 hours a day. Right now it's for grade 1 to grade 12. And what we found is that this model is very effective, right? A lot of people talk about being AI native and building AI first companies. But really, when you look at them, a lot of them are just wrappers. They're using OpenAI or Anthropic's models to make their product a little bit more intelligent. Whereas what we did with this product, we completely reimagined what the future of education is going to look like. How can we enable kids to learn better, more effectively, and enable them to be able to be actually excited about learning? So with our learning model, if your kids are interested in hockey, when they're learning about physics, they learn that in the context of a hockey game, right? So they actually understand what they're learning, how it's relevant to what they care about. And we've seen statistically, it makes a huge difference in their level of engagement, and time to completion, and them being able to actually excel and love school. But when I was working at TR Learning and leading product engineering and design team there, we were moving really fast. We were truly an AI native company. Our engineering team, product team, and design team, we were all trying to completely leverage everything that Liana and Andrew were talking about. But we got to a point that Andrew was mentioning, we were moving too fast to the point that we were losing control and track of what decisions we were making, why we were doing certain things. And because of that pain point, my team and I co-founded and started this company called Decisio, which is a decision operating system for product teams. Now, I was recently at a conference talking about agentic products. And in that conference, we surveyed the attendees. We had about 1,200 product leaders, primarily in Europe and North America. And they were all senior product managers with a healthy mix of B2C and B2B experience that they had. And what we found was that a lot of PMs, about 70% of us, are using LLMs and generative AI for things that we do, like writing emails, PRDs, things that we do on a daily basis. But not that many of us are still using it for improving collaboration, for decision making, and for things that make our job actually really, really hard and challenging sometimes. So what we also found in that report in Product Management Festival survey that we did is that the frequency of usage of AI in product managers' jobs to be done tends to be around really product documentation, market and competitive research, but again, not as much around prioritization or customer feedback and finding new opportunities for our product. And we also found that there are a lot of challenges, especially at bigger companies like JP Morgan, Visa, Google, for adopting some of these AI workflows that a lot of us see on LinkedIn. It's always easy to create a prototype, to create a proof of concept, but it's also easy to actually make it work and bring it to the way you're working with your team. And what we found in that report was that a lot of PMs are struggling to see how they can actually integrate these AI tools and generative AI workflows into the actual day and in the way that they work at their organization. And the other thing that was really important for us to find out is what are the things that are stopping us as product leaders to use these generative AI tools and use them more frequently. And what we found was that a lot of PMs are saying that they have so much going on, so many projects, so many priorities, that they don't even have the time to be able to actually experiment with new tools, with new way of working, with new workflows. And at the end of the day, we are responsible for driving great decisions, but the only way we can do that is if we can effectively collaborate with our cross-functional team members. And what we found is that, again, AI cannot solve things like competing incentives or politics, right? These are things that require human judgment, require product sense, require product thinking to actually be able to move the entire team in the same direction. And one of the things that a lot of PMs, I'm sure this resonates with a lot of you, are still looking for is their organizations and their companies to account for the impact of cross-functional collaboration, actually having metrics, a way of measuring how effectively are we measuring the collaboration between engineering and product team, right? It might be qualitative or quantitative metrics, but we need to start measuring these things so we can actually prioritize them moving forward. And this was shocking for us. Still, a lot of companies are not involving engineers from the get-go, right? And as Andrew mentioned, I'm a big also supporter and a big believer in the fact that the best product teams are the ones that engineers and PMs work together from the get-go, from the beginning. But still, unfortunately, about 21%, they do it after the product design is finalized. 20% do it right from the beginning. But as you can see, not everyone's still doing that, even though we know that's the best practice. And since the beginning of generative AI and the introduction of ChatGPT and all these LLMs that we've we can see that there's been a lot of different changes in the way that companies are measuring ROI and measuring the impact of generative AI on the business. But obviously, again, there's massive focus on profitability, massive focus on increasing the autonomy and allowing engineers and designers and PMs to drive and make some of these decisions by having the context that they need. And I'm sure some of you, this is a different report. I'm sure a lot of you saw this coming out. I think it was towards the end of last year, where MIT found out, a group of researchers at MIT found out that about 95% of generative AI pilots at enterprises end up failing. They never end up making their way to production, or they just don't get the buy-in or the adoption that they were hoping to receive. Now, I would take this with a grain of salt, because the way they're doing it and the way they're measuring some of these, the impact is not the way we as business leaders or executives actually think about the impact. They were looking at it from a very academic perspective, but there's still something here to consider. What they found is that a lot of companies do pilots. They're like, let's just try this out. And if it fails, they just give up right away. They're not going to give it some time to see what went wrong, to iterate on it. And the whole goal of doing pilots is that we want to see if this works, and if not, why it didn't work, so we can go back and do it more effectively. But they treat these pilots as if it doesn't work, that's done, we're never going to do it again. And the other thing that was really interesting in the findings was that most of the effort around vibe coding tools and efforts in generative AI is happening around functions like sales and marketing or operations. And the reason is obviously, it's around cost saving and revenue generation, right? So that's where a lot of enterprises see the opportunity to run these pilots and test out this kind of new solutions or new workflows for their teams. But the other thing, this is more relevant for startups and companies that are hoping to be able to sell their agentic AI and tools to enterprises, is that a lot of enterprises still only trust companies like Microsoft or Anthropic even, or OpenAI, because of their data privacy concerns, because of the confidentiality of some of these workflows and data flows. They do not easily trust a new startup that is trying to disrupt that market. So if a bigger player has a solution, they tend to prefer them, unless, again, that startup has something to offer that is significantly better than established players. And before I share my thoughts on where we're going from here, this is also a great report. I highly recommend you checking it out. Notion recently, I think about a few weeks ago, came out with this report on the AI transformation model. What I've seen is a lot of companies try to jump to level 4 or level 3, and they just miserably fail because of the fact that they don't actually have a strong foundation to be able to get to level 3 or level 4. So the way we think about this for a lot of companies that we talk to is that I think most companies now should be in level 1. Everyone should use Anthropic or OpenAI or Google's products for at least as a thought partner and helping them to be able to generate content faster, at least. But then when we get to level 2, this is the companies that have invested in having the AI as an assistant to complete individual tasks faster. And then once they have that working really well, then it can graduate to level 3, where now AI becomes one of their teammates. So now actually I can assign a series of tasks and workflows for the AI agents to complete. And then level 4, which there are not that many companies that are doing that right now, is where AI becomes a system and it runs actually critical workflows for them 24/7 with very minimal human intervention. Now, knowing that, the question becomes, how do we go from here, and how do we ensure that we can enable product excellence in the age of vibe coding? So the great news is that there's a massive need moving forward for product managers that really are great at what they do. And that is discovery, that is research, that is empathy, that is product sense, understanding what the business needs and balancing that with the customer's needs, right? These are things that requires human judgment, requires product sense. And AI, at least not today, is not where it needs to be able to do that. Now, a lot of people are getting excited about vibe coding, as Liliana and Andrew mentioned. But for those of you who actually have tried it, you know that what you end up with is this here, the AI flow that Jason shared recently on Twitter. So you've all seen this kind of car skateboard model around MVP and how we should build products and how we think about product development. With AI, it tends to do a lot for no reason. You want to build a simple system with 4 features, you end up with 35 features that no one asked for. And it's so hard to get rid of them, right? You've seen that even in your own products prior to generative AI, that you built like 6 different features last quarter. None of your customers are using it, but it's just so pretty, right? So beautiful. It's so hard to get rid of it. But you're like, well, maybe one day someone's going to use it. So you never end up actually getting rid of that feature. So AI is making this even worse. So those teams that do not have product management experience, do not have experienced product people to be able to know how to actually build a great product with very few features that gets high adoption, you end up with this kind of Frankenstein of a product that no one understands, no one knows how to use, and you just end up not getting the results you're looking for. And again, we'll talk more about the numbers I had on the right. It was mentioned earlier, but again, we are seeing a massive increase in the adoption from a lot of YC startups and companies that are going through these Y Combinator and why not, that they are heavily using this vibe coding technique for validation and really quick, rapid prototyping, which is, again, great for that. But when it comes to actual working with engineers and productizing these, the problem right now that we are seeing is that PMs, without any conversations with engineers, they go on and vibe code these ideas that they have. And the problem is that they might think they're moving faster individually, but it's actually impacting coordination. They're slowing down their teams being aligned around why they're doing that, why they're making those changes, and how is that going to work out for the entire product. And again, we'll talk more about this hopefully during Q&A, so I'm not going to go too much into details. But there's also a massive lack of trust in what's being generated by these vibe coding tools, where, again, on the surface, things look great, but when you actually go and look at the code that's being generated, you will see a lot of problems and issues that do not align with your architecture or do not align with the way that your engineering team has defined best practices. So again, these are some of also the challenges and the trust issue that's causing companies not adopting vibe coding tools and technique as much as we've seen yet. What works though, and we've seen working really, really well, is when teams rethink about the way they work and leverage vibe coding for really reimagining how they get work done. So for a long time, all of us here have been running sprints, either weekly or bi-weekly, and we've done stand-ups. That was the right way of doing it. But a lot of companies are still working that way, even though it doesn't really make sense. That was for the old age of building product. Now we don't need to have a 2-week sprints. We don't need to create small stories. We don't need to do status updates. We have to move a lot faster and think about how can we actually have a continuous flow where engineers and PMs are working together to create impact, build the right things, and how can we actually do mini demos during a stand-up instead of just talking about what's happening, making sure that what we're talking about is being visualized so everyone can see actually the changes that we're making, so it aligns with everyone's expectations and what the changes that we want to make in the product. Now, what AI and vibe coding tool has not solved, and it's potentially making it even worse right now, is a communication gap. Where we are seeing a lot of teams that they're trying to adopt a vibe coding or generative AI workflows in their day-to-day work, they end up slowing themselves down. I've seen teams that the PMs vibe code the tool in Cursor and then give it to the engineering team. And what the engineers end up doing actually is that they end up debugging the AI-generated code. And that takes them much longer than if you give the context to the engineers so that they can use the AI tool to do it themselves, rather than debugging the code that's been given to them by their PM. So again, these are things that are worth thinking about and considering, because at the end of the day, moving fast is not necessarily the right thing to do. If you're moving just faster and going the wrong direction, we just get to a wrong destination faster. It doesn't help us to actually create more value and be more efficient as an organization. So what we've seen that works really well is really updating the handoff model. Potentially, we don't even need handoff from design to development to engineers. If you can create smaller pods where teams are working together, have the same context and making the right decisions, you might not even need this kind of old and outdated way of working as a product team. And the last thing I'd like to share before, there we go. Sorry about that. Is what I've seen over and over again. It works really well for many different product teams where they really think about how they can redesign their collaboration around the new technologies that are available, around the new possibilities. And the first one is around having documents that are pretty much mini demos, right? So instead of a PM writing a PRD and an engineer going and looking at a PRD, or a designer looking at it and interpreting it their own way, you build this thing as visually as possible. I don't know how many of you have played around with Claude Design. So Anthropic, I believe it was last week, they released Claude Design. Claude Design is a great example of how it's not there yet, but it's a very close kind of path to where we need to get to, where you can quickly comment on changes that you need to make on the product. The comments are visible. We can see what comments were made. And once you extend that to a team, you can actually start seeing how everyone is visually collaborating and working on the same design. And this kind of changes the way of kind of documenting things. The other thing is, and that's what we do at Decision, is having a decision log practice where every product team within your portfolio of products has a decision log. You know what decisions were made, why those decisions were made, what assumptions we had when we made those decisions, and how we're going to reevaluate that decision, and how we're going to measure success for each of the decisions that we are making. So we can actually go back and see, be able to see the decisions we made. And that creates transparency, allows us to be able to audit the decisions we made and be able to improve things moving forward. The other thing is a real-time review of specs and PRDs that we have. So a lot of times, again, especially teams that work remotely, they don't really have this practice of engineers, designers, and product managers working together in real time to make changes, or to sit in a customer interview together to actually hear the feedback that they're getting. This makes a huge difference also, again, for context sharing. As we're all moving faster, we might be individually moving 10 times faster, but if we are not redesigning the way of working that we have as a team, we can never move at that speed. And the last thing is around clear AI usage policies of how do we use AI, when do we use AI, and how do we avoid using AI? So a good example of this is a company that one of our pilot customers that's using Decision. They require their PMs to actually whiteboard their strategy instead of, giving their strategy, letting Claude or any other LLMs out there to define their strategy, to create a PRD, or even like kind of having a very high level idea of what they want to do and pass it to an LLM to define their strategy. They require them to actually think critically about what do we want to do? Because if all of us in this room, we want to rely on LLMs to define our product strategy, in 4 or 5 years, every product is going to be the same. We're not going to get opinionated, very unique way of a product and how it should work and how it should be developed and how it should be designed. So this way of having these policies in place, especially if you're a VP of product or a product executive, forces your team to know when to use AI and when not to use AI, so that we can make sure that as an organization, we are leveraging it as effectively as possible. That's all I have. We'll talk more about it during Q&A. Thank you all so much. And if you'd like to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can scan the QR code. Thank you.
Hang on to your mic. Awesome. Can you guys hear me on this mic? Yes, amazing. So I'm a very empathetic person, and like when I get really excited, I find myself vibrating. I've just been vibrating in my seat all night. The talks were so phenomenal. I feel like it articulated so much. I'm actually living in the reality right now where I'm working backwards from the Homer alien car, because I'm working at a very early stage startup where one of the founders is an incredible technician, engineer, and he built an entire platform that is so chock-a-block filled with really amazing features. And yet we don't have a clear value proposition, and we've had to validate sort of who the customer is. And so coming on board as a PM, it's really validated so many points up here, which is that discovery and, sort of problem validation and hypotheses testing and, pinpointing your assumptions is so crucial to our process right now. When you can build anything, what do you build that's actually going to solve a problem? So I loved the talks and how they all work together. We have more questions than we could possibly get to tonight. We'd be here until midnight if we asked all of them. So I'll try to pinpoint the ones that were upvoted. So this one's just a general one for all three of you, kind of your perspective. Do you believe the product is dead and that the era of hyper customization is upon us? What do you guys think? Does that question make sense to you? Just open question to whoever wants to kick us off.
If this means is like the SaaS apocalypse, is that kind of like the continuation of that?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the case. I think even with like an AI assistant, you're still really useful for a very hyper-specific focused tool that you can use for a specific thing. I think that that's not, like, the SaaS apocalypse, I think, is a little overhyped.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, sorry. This microphones are new for me. I think the SaaS apocalypse is overhyped. And I think there's still, even with AI assistants, with AI, running your life, you're still going to have these very specific context sharing places that you can use for your product.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I think it's on. Yeah. I think that there was always this request for hyper customization, and that is usually from not necessarily understanding what the problem that you're trying to solve is. And you can go in that direction if you want, but I don't think that is really a very valuable to think about that. I talked about the fear on like getting lost in the fear, and sure, that's a fear that you can go down the road, but there have been people willing to buy products for ages, right? You can make your own tomato sauce at home, and that doesn't mean that you are going to do it all the time. Maybe you want to do it to try it out, but I'm probably going to buy a bottle from the store. Thank you.
No, just that's actually a great point. Just to add to that, because even we've seen this movie before, right? Because even when a lot of internal tools came out that any company could build their own internal email system, internal admin interface, everyone said, well, all these companies are going to die. But the reality is that, again, if your company is focusing on building these other tools that's not core to your business, then that's actually a really bad decision because you're wasting your time and resources building things that do not align with the core strategy. So companies should not be doing that. So that fear, I don't think is necessarily accurate because of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's interesting is that in the competitive space where you actually are competing with people in your same domain, yeah, there are going to be people who are constantly coming to try to like eat your lunch. But I don't think we need to worry about every company sort of building their own email system because, I mean, if they do try to, it shows a gross lack of understanding in terms of maintenance and complexity. And I'd really worry about where their C-suite is. But I think just in terms of, needing to pay attention to your market and your domain, absolutely. But I don't think we need to worry too much about every company building every tool they need, because I think that would be a really silly idea. Okay, next question. What strategies have teams adopted to transition from prototyping to scalable systems? Can any part of the code base be retained? And if so, when? Does that question make sense? Yeah.
Of the code that can be retained? Is that?
Yeah,
the
that's
second?
the last part. Can any part of the code base be retained? So, I mean, I guess the question is like, if you're transitioning from like vibe coding a prototype to trying to transition it to a scalable system, could you keep any part of the code from the prototype is maybe the question they're asking. I mean, for me, my immediate thought is like, are you prototyping from source code? Would be the only way. I don't know, Andrew, what do you think?
No. Sorry. No, just kidding. I think yes and no. It depends on the guardrails, how you set up the code, what the prototype looked like, what practices you were following, if you were self-evaluating, if there was the proper testing if you're doing the right contracts and the interfacing. So if you do it right and you kind of have the right agents that are supporting that vibe coding, yeah, it's probably very useful at the end of it. But if you just kind of prompt away and let it build on itself and build on itself and build on itself, I don't think that's usually salvageable. The better artifact there is the interaction and what it's supposed to be doing and how it works. So I don't think it'd be like a personal dig if you vibe coded something and engineers were like, please don't make me do this. But I also think that there are ways to do it that let it be salvageable. Also, if it's greenfield versus legacy versus like existing in a big context, that's another thing as well. And vibe coding in an existing code base, if you set it up correctly, is actually really good at copying what other people have done and reusing the patterns if you tell it to. Right. So with the design system, I was like, oh yeah, you can actually just set it up in your Claude MD to use the design system and use the right buttons. And this is how we do interfaces. This is how we do controllers. This is how we do all these things in your right Claude. And then, yeah, the code is probably pretty good. And if your agents are evaluating that and are reviewing themselves and adjusting, it could be more salvageable. But I think every single developer that gets PTSD and anxiety from every pull request that no one looked at. So.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, and this is not a plug, but this AI platform that I'm currently consulting with, it's a whole sort of, virtual machine with instances, and you can load your code base into it so that you can vibe code on your code base. And their hypothesis is that will get you higher quality output, that your engineers have a better chance of being able to work with. So that's what we're validating towards. Sounds like that's the direction that you'd want to go, but any thoughts, Evan?
Yeah, just to add to what Andrew said, I think like it's, if you use another analogy, like design, the best designers I know, it's not just about getting the design system right, the right components and the right, having the right visual things in place. It's about the user experience. It's about knowing what flow is intuitive, knowing what lands really well with our core audience. And again, AI is not where it needs to be today to get that right. It cannot get that right workflow, that intuitive user experience right. And that's where the designers spend most of the time, making sure that that thing makes sense. Same thing with engineering. It's not really about just using the right syntax, writing the right functions. It's about optimizing it to its fullest potential. So again, just because engineers and designers can write a PRD using Claude and ChatGPT doesn't mean that they should be doing that. So I think like that is a way of thinking about it, unless again, there are tools or systems that can help us with that in the future.
I mean, it sounds like the context is in more complex organizations. Why would you want to? Like, why would you want, what's the value of the prototype moving, like the code from the prototype moving into the scalable system? That's not the point of the vibe coding exercise. Sounds like is the real boil up there. Okay, what's one tip or piece of advice you have for using AI to automate the workflow between our engineering and product teams?
Sorry. Does anyone else want to take the first?
I think we have a glitch.
I can try. One of the things that maybe I didn't mention here, but like I think it's always very important to like build share understanding, share knowledge, share language, and back to that curiosity is like if I'm trying to understand how all of these systems work, that's probably a great place to start. Because if you're trying to like, just build me an agentic system that is going to replace this feature, please go do that. That's not going to go well, right? But if you actually understand what you are trying to do and why, you can actually have a better conversation with your engineering team about why this thing is worth building and investing in.
You have a thought?
I think there's a whole bunch. If you ever just look at a Figma prototype and you're like, okay, so how does this button work? Where does this go? What am I supposed to do with this? And the clickable Figma prototype is really cool, but if you have a clickable demo on a prototype, that's actually really cool. It actually helps solve a lot of that problems and the context sharing. I think also Claude is extremely good at expressing the intent that it can grok from something. So if you give a story, if you give it a PRD, if you give it whatever, but what will a developer think of this? They'll be able to tell you the key points for what it's doing. So if you're worried about like fact checking your sharing, and I think that also you'd also do like feasibility and vibe check for if this is well required, if this is well defined, and then what the impact or the scale of would be and the changes required in your code base to make something like this happen. I think all of those are like good fact checks that can do really, really quickly.
I mean, for me, the boil up of all of your talks is like actually what we should be focusing on as product people is not necessarily like using AI to automate parts of our workflow. It's like making sure that our engineers are part of the earlier stages of our process. Like if there was one takeaway I'd want people to walk out of here with, because all three of your talks really, like that's your central tentpole there, is like we all need to come together as problem solvers and think of each other as, you know, peers in this process rather than, you know, somebody on the other side of the wall. So for me, I think the most important thing that we should be as voices in our organization is, and this has been a problem since I started as a product manager 15 years ago, you always have to advocate to get engineers involved in discovery. We've always had to do it. I don't, you know, my entire early part of my career was as a consultant, like trying to convince my stakeholders to let engineers participate in discovery and framing. Like we're still there in this problem, and I think it's sort of getting worse a little bit. So advocating for discovery as a practice, I think is really the key thing. We are
Just to add to that, because you and Andrew both work at Pivotal Labs, and I believe pair programming is one of the things that you really champion at Pivotal Labs. And I think pair programming's definition is changing because now PMs and designers can be as closely involved. So it's not just the engineers doing pair programming; it's like problem solving as a team, as a pod. And before there was a lot of, to your point, pushback on bringing engineering to conversations with customers because we've all had those calls that you have 10 discovery calls, maybe 3 or 4 of them really stand out, and you get a lot of insights. And the perspective from an executive perspective was that's not a great use of our engineering time. But the math has changed now with agentic coding and what engineers can do and how faster they can move. So I think that should make the case for a lot of executives to back that up.
Yeah, I think that's the note to end on. We are at time. You guys have been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your incredible talks. We will be posting this event online as well as sharing some of the slides, speaker permitting. And I just want to say thank you guys so much. We have the space until 8:15. So stay, drink the bubbly, have the pizza, ask questions of these amazing speakers. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.